What's good, YouTube? James Polk here. Inspired by the idea from one of my other great YouTubers that I know of, Marcus Wade 2008, where he did a video segment on why or why not a deck should be meta. Well, I decided to do my own take of this, where I personally titled this Never Underestimate This Sleeper Deck, where I talk about rogue decks or sleeper decks taking on all odds against the current meta analysis. And one of the sleeper decks that I decided to do based on me making some serious impact, that will be none other than the Familiar Possessed. The Familiar Possessed girls are all spellcasters. They are all different attributes, yet they share the same thing where they are all 1850 beaters and 1500 defense. So for the 1850 beaters, this lets them being searched out by Fairy Tale Luna. Fairy Tale Luna has always considered to be my pseudo Lina of all things because she's a spellcaster with 1850 attack. So she is able to search out all four of them one by one, or even another copy of Luna, which is pretty good. And especially the fact that when it comes to Luna's quick play effect to bounce a card, sometimes that can come up. Or if for some reason, if you have any natural extenders, or if you want to place them back in any shape or form, this field spell, Grand Spiritual Art Ichirin, lets you reshuffle the searched spellcaster or the searched FP you have back into the deck, and that accesses you to all four animals from deck to hand based on which ones you searched out, which is crazy for immensive setup. And especially the fact that if you open up at least 1 to 2 animals along with Luna, this can generate you massive advantage without any problems to dodge against hand traps. So if anybody knows about how a card economy works in any shape or form, this lets you generate field advantage and hand advantage in any shape or form. And this is the best card in the deck that I considered. Zorua, the Magistus of Flame. Zorua, the Magistus of Flame, has the ability to target one Magistus on your side of the field, so basically himself, and this lets you equip from the extra deck to Zorua, which is the likes of Artemis. And then after his effect goes off, Zorua has the ability to special summon one spellcaster that is level 4 from hand or grave in defense, but its effects are negated. So generally, this, along with any spellcaster that is level 4, you're basically going crazy combo. So Zorua, along with either of the FPs, Luna, and then most cases, I do have more level 4 spellcaster legal targets, but we're going to have to talk about that another time. And then Artemis's equipping effect as a spell, she lets you search any Magistus monster from deck to hand. So in case if you never saw this card throughout the whole entire process of combo, Crowley, the Magistus of Grimoires, this is basically another one of your natural extenders, as in special summon the guy by sending a spellcaster from your field or hand to the graveyard, and then he is basically the ultimate toolbox of the deck. And when I say the ultimate toolbox of the deck, he has the ability to change into whatever attribute Crowley wants to be. So not only you have a spellcaster along with Crowley, depending on whatever the attribute you want. This also accesses you to any of the 4 pseudo bricks. These 4 pseudo bricks, as I like to call them, they're technically bricks. You never really want to draw into them, but at the same time, it's where in any situation about how the summoning conditions go, they technically share the same thing. Is where you need a spellcaster along with the level 4 or lower attribute to summon out one of these. And they do not activate from the hand or deck. So that basically gets around every single hand trap ever, which is 10 times crazy and insane. So Reaper or the Nefariouser in the TCG, Nefariouser happens to be one of my favorites because he can non-target reborn any level 4 or lower monster in my graveyard, which is sick. And then Rasenryu, the Wind Dragon, happens to be my favorite of the bunch because him taking out boss monsters by putting it back to the hand without targeting or destroying is extremely incredible. And this gets your massive setup of plays going without any problems to take care of boss monsters. Also, you have to use Rasenryu correctly in terms of the opponent to negate the card, whatever it is on board. And then if all of the negates are coming through, and if you're able to play through any of the bosses, which are natural extenders, then that is clearly no problem. Gigabyte the Water versus rogue decks in general that deals with discarding. Send, not discard, but send 1 random from opponent's hand to grave and both players draw 1. It can be pretty good under the right circumstances with the likes of Dangers, Dark Worlds, and Fables, because Gigabyte is send, not discard, but send. So that easily gets around all 3 of those different archetypes. And then in Nari Fire, this card can be a game stealer whenever your opponent's life is running out, which is crazy. And the idea about the Awakening Possessed monsters is that if you're able to get at least 2 out on board during the combo, this lets you set up any of the Charmer links. Well, not counting Lina, because when it comes to Crowley being a light attribute, it accesses you the light Charmer link. But not only that, but Crowley being the ultimate toolbox he is, changing into whatever attribute he wants to be, it accesses you all 4 Awakening Possessed monsters and all 5 Charmer links, which is insane. And then to top things off with the link summoning, you basically get yourself at least 2 searches in without having to worry about hand traps like Ash Blossoms, Drolls, none whatsoever. And as for the searches, it's usually these 3 in terms of the possessed spell traps. No spiritual attribute arts, not enough impact at the moment. So you really want to see at least 2 to 3 possessed targets from your deck in terms of searching. Also, again, that gets around every single hand trap ever there is in terms of inherent special summons. So whether if it's Ash Blossoms, Effect Veilers, Cypher and Gear Gammas, and even if they were to use their Omni Negates to destroy the Awakening Possessed monsters, it's basically either you're letting me combo or like keep the combo going, or otherwise, if you use your Omni Negate to kill the Awakening, you're basically giving me the free search anyway, which is crazy. And to talk about the possessed spells and traps. Like, once I have both Awakening Spell and the Unpossessed on board, this is where you definitely do not want to touch them, like in terms of destroying it and sent to the graveyard, because the Partnerships trap card has a graveyard effect where you can banish the partnerships to have the Awakening or the Unpossessed in your graveyard, replace it back from your grave back to the field face up. So basically, once I get both spells and traps going, you don't want to destroy them, you don't want to touch them while I generate the plus advantages off. So that puts me in the most excellent position there is. Now, some of you may wondered last few deck profiles ago, whenever I made top cuts, people be always questioning, why are you not playing Spirit Charmers? That is because Ash Blossom being a card. That is because the activation of Spirit Charmers, that's one card. And after the discard, as a cost, that's another card gone. So if Ash Blossom basically slaps this, you are already losing 2 cards, you're losing resources, and you cannot come back from that. And then let's talk about some tech cards. Whenever we're talking about going against boss monsters in general, Injection Fairy Lily happens to be one of those incredible techs that's been known to man a long time ago, because she's considered to be my favorite card in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. The fact that Injection Lily is a spellcaster 15 defense, so that means cards like the Partnerships, Unpossessed, and the Field spell, it's basically synergy with the boss killer of Injection Lily. And then the deck struggles up against the meta or opening up too much bricks in hand. But at the same time, it's where in this situation is where when it comes to Injection Lily taking on boss monsters with the likes of Avermax, for example, in this extreme particular setup, Injection Fairy Lily can easily beat over Avermax if played the card correctly, even if it's under IP Masquerena. You simply normal summon the Injection Lily, run over the Avermax, and then she's going to be the one pumping up the 3000 attack boost and not the Avermax, because you normal summon the Lily. Any boss monster they put out, at least 3000, and as long as if there are Omni Negates that are being played through, all of those Omni Negates are going to be ran over, or heaven forbid, if I have the Awakening of the Possessed back out, she's already going to be at least 4,000, let alone taking out at least one boss monster. Or in any late game setup, I can generally swing once, and if I have enough life points, she can be the game ender of all things. And then another way that the deck is having a hard time struggling against is Floodgates. Whenever we talking Floodgates to disrupt this deck a whole lot, Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress, is the answer to those Floodgate problems. Considering the fact that Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress, happens to be my favorite Lightsworn in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Lila has the ability to target a spell trap my opponent controls. She gets switched to defense mode and destroys that Floodgate. So technically, any floodgates I see that disrupts this deck from unable to play the game, she gets things going. Whether if it's Rivalry of Warlords, there can be only one, but not as much because of the animals. Lair of Darkness, Zombie World. I can pretty much go on and on about the floodgates. And the fact that Lila is a spellcaster, so that also means you have access to any of these animals, like No Tomorrow, and then keep the combos going, which is insane. And then this is the best Link monster ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Selene, Queen of Master Magicians. Selene takes 2+ monsters, including a spellcaster, which happens to make a Link 3, and then her ability is to gain spell counters first chance she gets Link summoned, which is absolutely nice. And the thing about how Selene is played, most be thinking like, sure, they can do some needle fiber shenanigans, bring out a Selene, or like the way how other combo decks, the way how they do it is where like needle fiber, bring out Despot 1 for the Auroradon stuff. Like, no, that's not how I roll with it. And it's not because of the pendulum abuse when it comes to Selene. That's not how I roll with it. That's going to be another topic another time. Selene has the most aggressive effect where you can remove 3 spell counters to special summon any spellcaster, no matter what spellcaster you want to be, from your hand or your graveyard in defense, as long as there is an link arrow opening up an empty spot. And its effects are still live, which makes Selene even more broken in the necessity of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, the fact that Selene is a spellcaster 1850 beats as well. So not only you're going to have access to the Awakening of the Possessed spell in terms of drawing a card, but Fairy Tale Tales happens to be another card because according to Fairy Tale Tales, as long as you have a spellcaster that's 1850 beater on board, the first time you take battle or effect damage, you do not take the damage at all, which is nuts. And then what's even more incredible in this particular setup is that if you already have the field spell, the possess trap, and then the Awakening of the Possessed spell, in this most extreme aggressive setup, you're basically controlling the board in the most excellent position. And last but not least, to end it, Charmers are having a little bit of a struggle without having an actual boss of the deck. And that would be Access Code Talker. And I know most of them are thinking Access Code can be a game ender. It's true. But the way I've seen builds, the way how they wanted to end games by using different Link monsters, climbing up to Access Code, and just like go for a little push of removal, going for game. That's not how I do. Because the real reason of Access Code in Charmers, it's because you have 5 different attributes in terms of the usage of Charmers. And the more attributes you use in late game setup, the more cards you are going to pop with Access Code. So, in conclusion, about how the deck is going to considered one of the most sleeper decks in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! For the necessity, I find Charmers can be quite impactful if played the deck properly based on the build however you want it to be. Sure, most of them can be competitive, and I agree with that because most of the meta decks have pretty much taken over. But I decided to choose Charmers of all things because ever since the structure deck dropped, I already knew no one didn't care about the deck but the Dark Rulers by themselves. But at the same time, it's where getting the structure deck plus the Genesis Impact stuff to mix in with the Magistus engine, the deck is able to play explosively. And again, once I set the possessed back rows, like, you definitely do not want to destroy them in any shape or form while you're taking a huge commanding position, because destroying the back row while I have the possessed traps in the grave, possessed normal traps, I could just simply replace the card that you destroyed back into the game, and you're wasting the card in terms of destruction. And with that being said, this is James Polk on the segment Never Underestimate This Sleeper Deck on Charmers. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. See you guys next time.